Before we step into tonight's story, take one quick second to like this video and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow, and it tells me you want more stories told with depth, emotion, and honesty like this one. Your support means more than you realize. Now, get comfortable. Let's begin. My husband brushed a soft kiss across the curve of my shoulder. Slow, familiar, grounding. It wasn't a kiss meant to start something. It was the kind meant to finish a moment with care. A quiet punctuation mark at the end of closeness. Then he shifted slightly, giving me space, like he understood something unspoken was still lingering inside me. The room stayed still. No sounds except our breathing slowly returning to normal. The air felt warm, thick with everything we had just shared. Affection, effort, tenderness. But beneath that warmth there was something else. A subtle hum in my chest. A quiet ache that wasn't dissatisfaction. Just continuation. Like a song fading out before the final note resolved. He noticed. He always noticed. He leaned in one more time, lips near my ear, voice low and gentle. Enjoy. Not a command. Not permission. More like trust. Like he was stepping aside from the edge of something he knew he couldn't walk into with me, but wanted me to experience anyway. And that's where this really begins. He had given everything he could in that moment before. Not physically, but emotionally. The way he held me had weight. The way he kissed me felt intentional, like he wanted me to feel safe, seen, wanted. His hands rested at my waist, steady, grounding, like anchors in shifting water. We moved together in that quiet rhythm couples find when words aren't needed. Blankets twisted around our legs. Warmth gathered between us, breaths mingling in soft waves. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was intimate in the truest sense. Presence without performance. When the intensity softened, he lay beside me, chest rising and falling faster than usual. A thin sheen of warmth still lingered on his skin. I stared up at the ceiling, but my mind wasn't there. Something inside me still turned, still glowed faintly, like embers that refused to go dark. I rolled toward him, resting my hand lightly against his chest. Again, I whispered, not demanding, just hopeful. His eyes opened slowly, a tired smile forming. Give me a second, he murmured. And he tried. He truly did. He kissed my shoulder, traced a slow line down my spine, moved close again. But I could feel the difference this time. The hesitation in his rhythm. The way his breath faltered. The way effort replaced ease. Not failure. Just limits. I held his face gently and kissed him. It's okay, I said softly. He looked at me with love and apology, but I wasn't disappointed. I loved him deeply. He had shown up for me fully. Yet inside me, that ember still glowed. Not doubt. Not absence. Just longing. A kind of emotional hunger that didn't end neatly. The next morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen in soft gold sheets. I stood there in his oversized t-shirt, coffee warming my hands. My body felt relaxed. My heart felt thoughtful. He walked in with messy hair and sleepy eyes, but his expression carried something focused. You ever feel like I'm not enough? He asked gently. The question didn't hit like insecurity. It landed like honesty. No, I said immediately. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. You still want more afterward. I took a slow breath. It's not about you lacking. It's just me. I feel deeply. And sometimes that doesn't switch off. He studied me. Not hurt. Not threatened. Just thinking. And if there was a way, he said slowly, to let you feel all of that, without losing us? I didn't answer. But I didn't look away. He reached across the counter and took my hand. That silence became an understanding. 2 days later, the door opened, and he walked in not alone. 5 people followed behind him. No dramatic energy. No cuernis. Just quiet presence. They greeted me politely, shoes off, voices calm. They sat at the table like this was a conversation, not an event. My husband set his keys down, walked to me, and handed me a glass of sparkling cider. You okay? He asked softly. I nodded, though my pulse had quickened. He placed a steady hand at my waist and leaned close. They're here for you. The words settled around me like warm air. He kissed me, not hurried, not uncertain. Ogra undin kish. A reminder of who we were first. Across the room, The guests remained quiet, respectful, observant without intrusion. Not taking. Not demanding. Simply present. Everything that followed moved with intention, not chaos. Slow gestures. Gentle guidance. No ruse. No performance. Just layers of emotional connection unfolding in different tones, different energies, different ways of being seen. Each interaction felt distinct. Not louder, not more intense, just different. Like hearing the same melody played on different instruments. One offered warmth through soft encouragement. Another grounded me with steady reassurance. Another held eye contact that felt deeply affirming. None of it erased my husband's presence. In fact, his presence anchored everything. A quiet hand at my back. A kiss to my temple. A reminder. You are safe. You are loved. This wasn't about replacing. It wasn't about excess. It was about expansion. And through it all, what I felt most wasn't physical at all. It was emotional release. Like parts of me that rarely had space were finally allowed to breathe. To be seen from multiple angles. To be understood in ways no single person could always carry alone. When it ended, the room didn't feel wild or chaotic. It felt still. Full. Complete in a different way. My husband wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and kissed my forehead. How do you feel? He asked. I searched for the right word. Understood, I said. He smiled. Not because he lost something, but because he had helped me find something. That night didn't change our love. It deepened our trust. Because intimacy isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about allowing truth to exist without fear. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding tighter. It's holding steady while someone you love explores the parts of themselves that don't fit inside ordinary boundaries. He didn't give me more. He gave me space to be more. And that made all the difference. The room didn't erupt when it was over. It exhaled. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the entire space had been holding a breath with me. And now it was slowly, gently letting go. No one rushed. No one spoke loudly. There was no awkwardness. No strange shift in energy like something improper had happened. Instead, there was a quiet softness. The kind that comes after something deeply human has unfolded in a safe space. I stayed leaning against the counter for a moment. Blanket wrapped around my shoulders. Feeling my heartbeat gradually slow. My body wasn't buzzing anymore. My mind wasn't racing. I felt open. Not exposed, open. There's a difference. Across the room, the guests moved calmly, respectfully. A few offered small smiles. One gave a nod that felt like acknowledgement, not possession. Another quietly thanked my husband. Not for access, but for trust. That mattered. That detail stayed with me. Because this had never been about spectacle. It had been about emotional permission. One by one they gathered their things. Shoes slipped back on. Jackets lifted from chairs. The door opened, cool evening air drifting in for just a second before each of them stepped back into their own lives. No premises. No lingering glances. No blurred boundaries. Just shared presence. And then closure. When the door finally shut behind the last guest, silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Before, it had been anticipation. Now it was understanding. My husband didn't speak right away. He walked toward me slowly, like approaching something fragile. Not because I was, but because the moment deserved care. He tucked the blanket more securely around my shoulders, his hands warm and steady. Then he rested his forehead against mine. How are you feeling? He asked. And he meant it. Not as a checkpoint. Not as reassurance for himself. But as genuine curiosity about my inner world. I searched. There was no confusion. No guilt. No sense of having crossed something wrong. I feel full, I said softly. But calm. Like something that's been echoing inside me finally got to make a sound. He smiled, and I saw it. Relief, yes. But also pride. Not ownership. Not control. Pride in having loved me in a way that required courage. You didn't drift away, he said quietly. I didn't want to, I replied. And that was the truth. Nothing about what happened pulled me away from him. If anything, it had drawn a brighter outline around what we were. The foundation hadn't cracked. It had proven it could hold weight. Later, We sat on the couch together, legs tangled, the house dim and peaceful. No music. No television. Just the soft hum of night settling around the walls. Was it what you thought it would be? He asked. I shook my head slightly. It wasn't bigger. It wasn't louder. It was just wider. He tilted his head. Wider. Like my emotional world got to stretch its arms, I said. And you didn't try to pull them back in. That landed between us. Because that had been the real gift. Not the experience. Not the novelty. Not even the intensity. It was the space. Space to feel deeply without being told it was too much. Space to explore without threatening what we had. Space to be understood as someone whose emotional range didn't fit into neat, small boxes. And he hadn't tried to shrink me to make himself comfortable. He had stood beside me while I expanded. That's love most people never talk about. In the days that followed, nothing in our routine changed, and yet everything felt subtly different. We still made coffee together in the mornings. Still argued playfully about what to watch at night. Still folded laundry on Sundays, bumping into each other in the hallway. But there was a new layer of honesty beneath everything. Unspoken fears had lost their power because they'd been faced gently instead of avoided. Desire had stopped being a silent question mark and become a conversation. Trust wasn't assumed anymore. It was proven. One evening, about a week later, we sat on the balcony watching the sky fade into deep blue. Would you ever want that again? He asked, not tense, just curious. I thought about it carefully. It's not about repeating it, I said. It's about knowing we could talk about it. Knowing we don't have to hide parts of ourselves to stay together. He nodded slowly. That answer satisfied him more than a yes or no ever could. What I learned from that night wasn't about desire. It was about emotional truth. Some people love quietly. Some love loudly. Some love in straight lines. Others love in shapes that curve and stretch and double back. None of those ways are wrong, as long as they're honest, consensual, and rooted in care. What breaks relationships isn't complexity. It's silence. It's pretending. It's shrinking yourself until resentment grows in the dark. That night, we chose light instead. Not reckless light. Not careless freedom. But intentional, grounded openness. And because of that, nothing was lost. Something was understood. Years from now, I won't remember the details of the room or the order of events. But I'll remember the feeling of my husband's hand steady at my back. The way he asked how I felt, and waited for the real answer. The way love, instead of tightening its grip, opened its palm. That's the part that lasts. And if stories like this, about connection, emotional depth, and the real conversations relationships require, speak to you, make sure you're subscribed. There's more ahead. More human. More honest. More real. Because intimacy isn't just about closeness. Sometimes, it's about courage.